topic of discussion is chapter 1 from your book Microeconomics, Economy and its Central Problems. Basically, for understanding this particular chapter, we have to just remember what an economy is. Economy is simply a system which provides, just recalling, the source of livelihood and a means to satisfy the wants to the human beings, right? This economy has certain problems. Various problems arise in the economy, and these are known as the central problems. To understand these problems, we have to just understand, first we have to understand that basically what are the causes of these problems, right? As we have already discussed that the human have wants, then for them satisfaction of the wants we need resources, and the resources have alternative uses, right? There are certain characteristics of all these features. I hope you remember the meaning of these words. Wants are desires, are needs, resources, the factors of production needed to produce the commodity, just recalling, which are land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Hearing them from class 10th, factors of production, these are the resources to produce those goods and satisfy the human wants, and all these resources have alternative uses. Now in detail we will study all these, how these become the causes of the central problems. Three basic causes. First, unlimited human wants. Then limited resources to satisfy these wants, and alternate use of resources, right? As discussed, that satisfaction of one particular want, if you satisfy one want, second want will occur, and so on. For example, as we have already done, that if you, when you were a child, you wanted a tricycle, then a bicycle, then later on a scooty, then a car, and so on. And likewise in all the commodities, you want better versions of each and every commodity. These wants are never ending. The keyword you have to remember, they are never ending. And satisfaction of one want gives birth to another want. Then resources are limited. You can see resources required to produce a commodity are the factors of production, land, labor, capital, and enterprise. They all are limited in an economy. You can just think over. The land area is limited, the labor available in a particular economy is limited, the capital available in an economy is limited, also the number of entrepreneurs are limited. Then there is a problem, you cannot satisfy your unlimited wants with limited resources. One more additional characteristic is present, which is known as alternate use of resources. Actually, this is the basic characteristic of, or the cause of this particular problem, which leads to the problem of choice. You have to remember, economics is all about studying the behavior of the human, decision making, what he chooses. This is the basic characteristic which creates this problem, the problem of choice. Because with limited resources and unlimited wants, you cannot satisfy all your wants. This is the basic, these are basic three causes of the central problems of an economy. Now we will move on to the discussion of the three central problems of an economy. Economy may have various other problems like unemployment or some other problem, but the three basic problems for each and every economy remain the same, faced by each and every economy. Global economy you can call, this is a universal problem. These are the universal problems, central problems of an economy. The first central problem is what to produce, because with limited resources unlimited goods cannot be produced. Second problem is how to produce, and third problem is for whom to produce. First we can just have simple discussion about these problems, like what to produce, what should I produce. For example, if I have a land area, I have a choice. I can make a school here, or a hospital, or an industry, a firm basically, or maybe say open a shop here. I have to choose what I have to produce, right? So basically unlimited goods cannot be produced, you have to choose what to produce. Or simply if you take a factory has to choose what goods it needs to produce, or what goods it can produce. It cannot produce all the goods. And whenever we increase the production of one good, the production of the other good will fall. Okay, so now we have to move on to the technical words. What to produce. Economy has to basically choose between two types of goods, that is the consumer goods and capital goods. Economy has to decide that which type of good to produce, but first we should try and understand what these goods means. Consumer goods are the goods which directly satisfy some of your want. Like for example, if you were feeling cold, say, bought a jacket for yourself and want has been satisfied, right? Or maybe simplest example, you were hungry, bought food for yourself and ate it, want is satisfied. But these capital goods are the goods which are used for the further production. You can call them as machines and tools. Are the capital goods which are used for making these consumer goods. So you can just see that both the goods are equally important for the economy. If there is a lack of capital goods, its ability or its capacity to produce in future will be reduced. While if there is a lack of consumer goods, the people will not, the members of the economy would not be able to satisfy their wants. Economy has to balance between the requirement of two goods. When you have to explain this particular problem, these are the things which need to be mentioned, right? Suppose you are asked that explain the problem of what to produce, so you have to mention that there is a choice between the consumer goods and the capital goods. You have to tell what a consumer good means, what a capital good means, and you have to write that economy has to make a balance so that it can fulfill the requirement of both the commodities in an economy. Then the second topic of discussion is how to produce. It basically again is a problem of choice regarding the technique of production, which technique of production to use. Economy has two options. Either it can adopt labor intensive technique or a capital intensive technique. Okay, so as we are talking about how to produce, an economy has two techniques. It can choose any one of them. Labor intensive technique means where we employ more labor and less of machines. or we can better call it as less of the capital. Capital goods are less while labor is more. The capital intensive technique is where the capital is more, or you can say it's basically machine based and labor is less. For example, you can say a factory which is working with say 4 machines and say 100 laborers, while there is another factory which is working with say 8 or say 10 machines and say only 15 labor. Okay, here the maximum work is done by the machines. It is a new concept basically, like after coming off the assembly line. Earlier, you know, most of the goods were made with the hands. Now there is an assembly line on which all the products are basically manufactured by the machines. Actually, they are cheaper. For example, take a small example. If you have a particular restaurant, you want to serve the cold drink in your restaurant as well. So you have two options. Either you can hire a person who will serve the cold drink in your particular restaurant, or you can have a dispenser which will automatically dispense the cold drink. So this type of technique would be called as capital based or capital intensive, while this would be labor intensive. So you can just compare that few important things. For a capital intensive technique, once you have to invest in a particular machine, but then you need not pay the labor. While here, like suppose if I am paying say 5,000 rupees to this labor per month, and the cost of this particular machine is say rupees 1 lakh. So in 20 months I would be paying him the amount of 1 lakh, and I will have to pay more till the time I want him to work for me. But this machine, once bought for 1 lakh, then doesn't have any running cost, no salary to be paid to it. So in the long run, the capital intensive technique is cheaper. So most of the big companies, big production units are now switching over to capital intensive technique, but it's expensive. So now again the economy has to decide that which type of technique it has to use, whether it should use the labor intensive technique or a capital intensive technique. If you look at an economy like India, if you look at the economy of India, so here we have large number of labor. So ideally India should adopt a labor intensive technique. And also the labor is available for at a cheaper price as compared to other countries. Labor in India is cheap, while the capital intensive technique cannot be neglected, otherwise economy would remain backward, right? It cannot compete with the global economies. So again we have to keep a balance so that our labor doesn't get unemployed. There is no widespread unemployment due to the coming of capital intensive techniques. Like right now you are seeing the employment is declining in the secondary sector. So again, when you explain this particular problem, how to produce, you have to mention that there are two techniques available for an economy, the labor intensive technique and the capital intensive technique. You have to mention what they mean, their definition, and then you have to also mention, you can also use the example of India, say for particular economy like India, both the techniques are important, and similarly for all the economies. Then for whom to produce? Again we can classify the population of an economy according to the income level. Actually various measures can be, various parameters can be used to divide the population of an economy. One of them is income. Say the richer section of the society and the poorer section of the society, or you call them as the more financially more strong section and the weaker section. So if you can simply understand that the goods, services which they want are actually luxuries or the comforts, while this particular section is always engaged in fulfilling the necessities. So economy has to cater to the needs of both the people, it has to both the groups of the persons, it has to produce the required goods by the stronger section of the society or the high income group, and similarly it has to fulfill the needs of the poorer section of the society. So again a balance is needed, it cannot neglect. Like for example, in my economy, if I want to purchase certain commodities, say a Mercedes car, very expensive, and my economy cannot provide it to me, then I can buy it from some other economy. Otherwise, the people will start importing the goods. And if the poorer section is neglected and they have no other choice to go, so there are balance is needed between the production of both these goods. When you are explaining, again you have to mention the rich, poorer sections. In some of the books you might see another description on the basis of age. You can also classify an economy on the basis of age. You can have children, youngsters, and the old age. Again we can see that all three groups have different sorts of needs and wants. They require different sort of goods to satisfy their wants. Maybe the children like the toys, youngsters like the electronic gadgets, and maybe these people need the medicinal facilities or the medicines, right? So the economy again has to keep a balance because of the limited resource to produce these commodities in a balance, so none of the group is neglected. So just a quick review, the three central problems: what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, and all of them are related to the problem of choice. Everywhere you see that you have options and you have to choose, and economy has to choose. The causes of the central problems being: first, the unlimited wants; second, the limited resources; and third, the alternate use of resources. Now we have to move on to the next topic, that is solution to the central problems, how they can be solved. As we know, there are three types of economic systems already studied in class 11th. A capitalist economy, a socialist economy, and a mixed economy. In the capitalist economy, all the factors of production or the resources are owned by the private sectors, right? And here the motive is to earn profit. Then a socialist economy, resources are owned by the public or the government of the economy, and the motive is welfare. While in a mixed economy, both have the ownership of resources. So these are the basic economic systems, and we have different sort of solution on all the economic systems. Like for example, if you talk about the capitalist economy, you must have come across a term known as price mechanism. So in the capitalist economy, the problem of the central problems are solved with the help of the price mechanism. Here the answer to the three central problem is price mechanism. Price mechanism is a process where the price is determined by market forces, that is demand and supply. Later we will study what demand and supply mean in detail. Right now also we can just understand the meaning. Demand means what the people are wanting to buy, and supply means what the producers are selling in a particular market. You have the buyers and the sellers. The market contains basically the number of buyers who create the demand and number of sellers who create the supply. So here the prices are decided by the basically by the forces of demand, and it is entirely a profit motive based economy. Okay, so it would produce only those goods which give the maximum profit to the producers, right? Without any moral consideration, no welfare in the economy, problem is solved by the price mechanism. Higher the price of a commodity, more people want to produce it. Lower the price of the commodity, lesser people want to produce it. And for the buyers, it is the opposite, right? You have to always remember. Then next we talk about the solution of the problem. And remember that when you are explaining it, you have to write the meaning of price mechanism, and you have to mention that here the profit is the basic motive of the producers. Then second is a socialist economy. Moving on to the socialist economy, a socialist economy can also be known as the centrally planned economy. Because here all the sources are owned by the government. Just we have just studied here, all the factors of production are owned by the government, so it is a centrally planned economy where there is a planning commission. Like in India, there is a planning commission which plans that what goods are to be produced in an economy, okay, and for whom to produce, or basically solution to all the three problems is provided by the planning commission or the centrally planned economy or the authority of the particular economy, right? The government, the administrator of the economy. While if you talk about the mixed economy, where we have combined ownership, so both the price mechanism and central planning commission they take the decision of solving the problem. This basically in the private sector, as you can see, Indian economy is a mixed economy, private sector, and this is done in the government sector or the public sector. Now we just have to remember that what the solutions are and how you have to explain them when it is asked in the form of the question and answers. You also have to remember one very important thing, that in economics, if you want to score marks, you have to do the question and answers. Okay, so we can just simply discuss that what things we have to remember. Question and answers, the most important part. We have to just whatever keywords I am marking, those have to be always to be mentioned in the answers. Next topic of our discussion would be the production possibility curve. Or it is also known as the production possibility frontier. Okay, this production possibility curve, referred to as PPC or the production possibility frontier, basically it is a combination of two goods which an economy can produce. It is a curve which shows the various combinations production possibility curve or the production possibility frontier. Basically the production possibility curve shows various combination of two goods which an economy can produce with the given resources and technology. Okay, simply it's a curve, like we have already done. That curve itself is a representation of the various variables. So here production of good X and production of good Y are the two variables. So it is representing that how many combinations of these two goods you can produce in an economy when your resources are fixed and your technology remains constant. When you have to define the production possibility curve, these words are to be mentioned. These are the keywords. Combination of two goods which an economy can produce with given resources and technology. Right? Now we will just move on to the diagrammatic representation of this particular curve. Suppose an economy is producing two goods, say wheat and say rice. Again, x-axis shows the units of wheat produced, y-axis shows the units of rice produced. Suppose my economy is operating at this particular point. Say I am producing 100 units of wheat and say 200 units of rice. This is first combination showing 100 units of wheat and 200 units of rice. Like suppose I want to increase the production of wheat, so I need to move on to point B on the curve. So maybe now I am able to produce 150 units of rice and maybe say 100 units of 150 units of wheat and maybe say 100 units of rice. So again it can be depicted 150 and 100. Similarly, moving on to point C, if I want to increase the production of good Y, then say I am able to produce 50 units of wheat and say 250 units of rice. So again this combination can be written as 50 and 250. So these are the various combinations which are lying on a particular production possibility curve, and these are the number of units which an economy can produce for good X and good Y. Again, as we have already discussed, that curve basically gives us two basic informations, or they are also known as the properties of the curve. The properties of PPC it has two basic properties. First, it is downward sloping, right? It depends on the relation between the two variables. And second, it is concave to origin, right? We have already discussed that any curve is downward sloping due to the inverse relation between the two variables. As we can see that when we shift from point A to point B or say to point C, the combinations, production of one good increases and production of the other good reduces. Again, it is simple reason because the resources are limited. If I employ my resources for the production of one good, then the resources available to produce the other good reduce and the quantity of production of that particular good falls. Like you can simply imagine here that if you take the example of a field, suppose economy has a fixed area, it wants to increase the production of wheat, then less land area will be left to produce rice. So the production of rice will fall and vice versa. Basic thing we can understand, it's a downward sloping curve. Then second, concave to origin, right? We already discussed. So here, whenever you are explaining why it is downward sloping, you need to mention that it is due to the inverse relation between the production of good X and good Y, or maybe say wheat and rice as we have taken here. And you also have to mention that if we increase the production of one good, say increase the production of X, so less resources are left to produce good Y. This is the reason, the basic reason why there is an inverse relation between the production of two goods. These are the keywords, you have to mention them whenever you have to explain this. Now for understanding the second property, right, the concave to origin, we already have discussed that it depends on the rate at which the slope is changing, right? And whenever the slope rises, when we move from one point to another, in that particular case the curve is a concave curve. So the basic idea, basic reason I already know that its slope is rising.
So sir, can we say that it is due to inverse rising MRT?
This will be after this, na? It will be MRT only. Now we will discuss the reason about it. Okay, so I come to know that it is concave to origin. This we are discussing the second property of PPC. And the reason, basic reason is due to the rising slope. Now to understand this concept, first I should know what is the slope of PPC. As discussed, slope of any curve is equal to delta y by delta x. That is change in the variable y and change in the variable x. Slope of PPC, if you look at good at on the y-axis, we are showing the units of a good y, and here we are showing the good x. So it is change in the quantity of y and change in the quantity of x. Little simple to, I will make it little simple to understand. Suppose this is the PPC. Say I am on a particular point, say A. The combinations are 20 and 30. And when I move on to another point B, say now the combinations are 21 and 28. Okay, so if I want to calculate the slope between point A and point B, I can use the formula. Just see the change in good y, delta y. The change in good y is 2, while the change in good x is 1. Right? So slope comes out to be 2 by 1, or I can better call it as 2:1. Now basically, if you talk about the PPC, the slope of PPC has been given a specific name, that is MRT, that is marginal rate of transformation. So now we will discuss specifically about the PPC, about the MRT, that why it is happening that MRT is rising or PPC is getting a concave shape. So first we will understand the meaning of MRT. MRT is the marginal rate of transformation okay, and it is defined as the rate at which one good needs to be sacrificed to increase the production of the other good by 1 unit. When you are defining MRT, you write that it is the rate at which, basically it's a rate, this needs to be mentioned, it is the rate at which one good needs to be sacrificed to increase the production of the other good by 1 unit. So after learning the meaning of MRT, now we have to understand why MRT diminishes. Basically, all resources are not equally efficient in production of all goods. It means that suppose a person A is working as a carpenter, then he will not be as efficient to work as a plumber. You have to remember that there is a concept known as specialization. If a person is continuously doing a particular work, he becomes more efficient in doing that work. Efficient means that he can do that work at a lower cost. Like suppose if I have to teach economics, I have been teaching it from a long time, so I can teach it very efficiently, but maybe not any other subject. Similarly, if your maths teacher is made to teach physics or a commerce teacher is made to teach science, they may not be able to teach it in that particular manner. Like this person, when working as a carpenter, he is more efficient, but once he moves on as a plumber, he has to first learn about the particular job. So once we transform, suppose two goods are being produced, we can take the same example, say two services are being produced, and when the people from here start and we want to increase the production of this particular service B, say plumbing. These people who move from here, they are efficient here. They know this particular job, but when they reach here, they become inefficient. They have to learn this job. That's the difference. Efficient labor moving from one particular product, the rate of reduction in production means production will fall at a rapid pace due to lack of efficient labor. But here production will increase at slow rate, because the labor which is coming in is less efficient in this particular job or in this particular service or for producing this particular good. Remember, it can be any two goods. Say you can take wheat and a mobile phone. This is the basic reason why the MRT always rises, because you lose more production but you gain less production. Now this can also be explained with the help of a numerical or a schedule. Like suppose we take two goods, again say good X and good Y, and say MRT. Right, this is the schedule which is representing us that the MRT rises at an increasing rate. You can see here X changes by 1 unit, 2 units are sacrificed, then for additional unit 3 units are sacrificed, 4 and then 5. Just to remind you, it's not a rocket science to make a schedule. In our previous lecture we have already done how to frame a schedule. But once again you can understand, you simply have to keep increasing the difference. Like first I subtracted 2, then I subtracted 3, then 4, then 5. You could take any numbers, right? But you have to remember that X should always increase only by 1 unit. So MRT, as we said, it is the slope of the PPC curve. At first place cannot be calculated, then it's 2:1, 3:1, 4:1 and 5:1. If a question is asked for representation of this MRT through a numerical example, you have to make this type of a schedule and calculate the MRT. While the reason why MRT rises is the resources are not equally efficient in production of all the goods. These are the two important questions which can be asked from this particular topic. Next topic of our discussion is opportunity cost. You can just understand from the term itself, opportunity cost is actually cost of any opportunity which is lost. And this opportunity is lost because you have undertaken some other opportunity. For example, after passing your class 12, you had two options. You can do a work or a job, or you could go for higher studies. Suppose you choose to do a job, then the career which was waiting for you here, or the knowledge which you were to gain here, that is the opportunity cost. Other way around, if you choose this, the salary which you would get from this particular job would be the opportunity cost, right? So if you have taken, you cannot actually take all the opportunities together. You have the limited means, so you have to either sacrifice one or the other, and this is known as the opportunity cost. So it can be defined as the cost of the next best alternative given up. If I want to define it, the keywords would be cost of the next best alternative given up or sacrificed. Right? To take one particular opportunity, what you have given up, what could have been the next best option. Then in context of PPC, when we talk about the opportunity cost, it is actually marginal opportunity cost, and it is nothing, it is same as MRT. Actually MRT is showing me that if I choose to produce one particular good, then how many units of that particular good I have to sacrifice. So again it is telling me that if I choose this, that then what am I losing? Basically MOC is in terms of money and MRT is in terms of the goods or the units of the commodity. That's the only difference. Otherwise both terms are same. So if you are asked to define MOC, you can always define MRT. You can say it is also equal to the MRT, this being the basic distinction. ठीक है, हो गया तो कट कर दो ये चैप्टर।